trusted Open University, Open Elective students, Indian Literature 1, the first semester student. And in the morning session, there was a lot of internet connection problems, so could not reach the student. So regret the inconvenience. So here in this session, in the afternoon session, I continued the text. I was teaching, Nehru's an autobiography. This is the text prescribed for you study in the first semester, the open elective Indian literature 1. I was also saying in this first semester, the text like are introduced other writers like the Kalidasas, some plays are introduced, and minutes on Indian education by Macaulays, and even Nehru's an autobiography. These are the very significant text. Indian writing in English, Indian literature. So I was telling in the morning the purpose of introducing this Indian literature to all the students in the open elective with the purpose that the students should acquaint themselves about the Indian culture, heritage, the art, and the literature for the holistic, understanding of Indianness. So that's the reason why we have introduced all these writers. So if you look at this text, that the first semester, the open elective Indian Literature 1. So I'm teaching you today Jawaharlal Nehru's, autobiography. This is an autobiography by Nehru, and I was telling in the morning. And here, Nehru's he has written this autobiography in 1934 and 1935. So between this time, he has written this autobiography in prison. The when he was in prison, in more than the personal story of an individual, it is not just a mere an individual, the personal story, but it is something to do with his account of the political awakening of the nation. So there are two, the themes. One is the his mere personal documentation, his personal history, along with in autobiography, an autobiography in Nehru, it talks about an account of the political awakening of a nation, and he witnessed, and he is the bear witness the political happenings in India, and remember the first prime minister of India and its struggle for freedom from the British rule. So that also captured in this autobiography. Its struggle for freedom from British rule and its search to reshape itself as a modern society to rid the cultural and economical shackles of the past. So the text is not only talking about the personal details of the Nehru, rather it's talking about the political awakenings, the national struggle movement, and the freedom struggle movement of India, and then the modern society, how India, shaped to, got the new shape in terms of modern Indian society, and a lot of cultural and economical issues which are always there, discussed in this text. And there is another, I'm just reading the blurb of the text. What is that? Through this narrative, through this an autobiography, the narrative written with the extraordinary eloquence. He has written with an extraordinary eloquence, and then and honesty. There is a candid in approach. He because every writings can be the fictional things, but autobiography. He in this autobiography, he's just a honest documentation. In his personal documentation, there is no fancy or no fictional issues are dealt here. And apart from that, and here the vibrant descriptions of Mahatma Gandhi and the other leaders of the national movement. He also expresses in this autobiography how his affinity with Mahatma Gandhi, that you could see here. And here is a very brilliant and very complex and introvert personality. He himself acknowledged that he had a very introspective personality and a very brilliant and a questing mind, a deep love of nature. So he has that kind of deep love for nature and engaging just for life, and above all, a passionate commitment to democracy and secularism. So here is a man with all this different, the facets of his life, his affinity with the Mahatma Gandhi and his involvement in national freedom struggle movement and his commitment to democracy and secularism. So this is the really small introduction about this Nehru's autobiography. Now I'm going to talk about how this text talks about with the different section. So how does even before that, I must talk about the Nehru. You know that Nehru is among the most distinguished Indians of the 20th century. The one of the he's the statesman of India, and he's the most distinguished Indians of the 20th century India. So he is as one of the makers of modern India. In his life merges with the life of nation. Inevitably, a study of his writing becomes not only a study of the man but also of the history of the modern India. So here we not only read about a person, Nehru, and we also come across the history of a modern India. So that is the very interesting question in this an autobiography in this text. So Nehru's writings reflects his dynamism. Now we understand his writing craftsmanship, potentiality, and his broad sympathies. You know how he's a man of empathetic. He's reaches to the poorest to the poor. That's how we could see in the histories of books that has been written on Nehru's his love for children and all that. So, to know much about Nehru is the born in 1889 until 1964. The bare facts about Nehru's life can be told quickly in this entire autobiography. There is a different divisions of these narrations. One is he was born to rich Kashmiri parents, and he had an exclusive education at home at the hands of governors, and then at Harrow and the Cambridge and the inner temple. These are the places where he studied. Even at home, the governors used to teach him, and he was sent to foreign even for study, the Harrow and Cambridge and inner temple. Soon after his return from England, he plunged into the nationalistic struggle. Soon after his education, he plunged into, he involved himself with the nationalistic struggle. Went to jail a number of times. This is the trial and tribulations that we come across in Nehru's autobiography. He expresses his stark realities of his the personal details. Had been to jail a number of times, became president of the Indian National Congress, and took a leading part in the a negotiation that culminated in the freedom of the country, and headed the interim government. So he was the first prime minister of free India from the August 1947 till his death on 27 May 1964. So this is a brief introduction about Nehru's, and he known for his the famous other texts such as an autobiography, this one, and the glimpses of world history, and then the discovery of India. These three texts are very very prominent. They're very significant in Nehru's entire the writing in his writing. The one is I told this is an autobiography and the glimpses of world history, and after that the discovery of India. So other the major the text of Nehru's writings. So here, this autobiography, Nehru did most of his series writing during his prison terms. So he has written this text in his prison terms because he has been to prison a number of times, remember? So his autobiography was written entirely in jail in a period of less than 9 months. So within the 9 months, this text was written from June 1934 to the February 1935. This is the time duration that this text was written. I repeat, this autobiography was written entirely in jail in a period of less than 6 months, and from June 1934 to February 1935. On 14th February 1935 to be precise. So this is the time when he has written his autobiography. So as he explained in his chapter, there are many chapters like prison experiences, and then Naini prison and his education at Harrow and Cambridge, and all the details. His affinity with the Mahatma Gandhi, and his involvement with national struggle movement, and Simon Commission movement, and civil disobedience, and the definitions of satyagraha, and many other main chapters. We come to know how Nehru has undergone his experiences, the way he shares his experience with us. So coming back to the how the text begins with, if you look at the text, there are many chapters. The chapters are in number. I am going to pick up only a few important chapters and leaving the rest of the chapters for you for your own personal study. And now coming back to his the way he, when we read this autobiography in the beginning, in the inception of his, autobiography, we understand Nehru. He talks about. So I told you there are three things that we should keep in our mind. The number one, and Nehru as a writer. Much before we read this autobiography, there are three things that should be kept in our mind. One is, assess how Nehru as a writer, and explain the role of autobiographies in Indian writing in English. When we talk about Indian writing in English, the role of this autobiography, and then there are a few significant chapters that we have to concentrate. But for your perusal, for your information, the first chapter is a very very important, because Nehru has had a, he had a very safe childhood, the secure childhood days. And this is how the this autobiography begins with a very striking sentence. How does it begin with? He is an only son of prosperous parents. So he born with a golden spoon. I mean, he's born to a rich people. So he was born with a silver spoon. So an only son of a prosperous parents, he is apt to be spoiled. So he had all advantages to be spoiled. It was because he was a born rich. But Nehru, he made use of his opportunity very well, and for his own development, the personal development, and because his education, is a responsible person in this political arena, the political freedom struggle movement. So look at the sentences. An only son of prosperous parents is apt to be spoiled, especially so in India. He had all the advantages. He has a, he has a lot of advantages by birth itself, because his father Motilal Nehru was also a lawyer, and he's the born with a silver spoon. So he had a sheltered childhood. He has a very safe, sheltered childhood life. So he was left to himself to weave his private fancies and invent his own solitary games in the formative years of his life. So he had a very, individual, a very secluded way of life in the beginning. So a very tranquil way of life in the beginning itself. And loneliness became a part of his being. So he was haunted by loneliness. He did not have any much, many more, companions, or, loneliness became part of his, life for being. Like other children, he listened to stories from the Indian epics. So he grew up reading Indian epics. Which are the best epics in? I mean, which are the epics? There are like Ramayana, Mahabharata. They are called as the best epic in Indian literature and epics. So he listened and he grew listening to the stories from the Indian epics, and he participated in many of his religions and festivals. So now when the autobiography begins, we understand that Nehru's an autobiography. It begins with Nehru's, the very safe, rich, the all the facilities, and his life is full with security, because he's born with a silver spoon, as the proverb says. Is and up to be an only son of a prosperous parents is up to be spoiled. But what happens further? So further here, um, and but he liked best the celebrations of his birthday. He liked best the celebrations of his birthday, the where he was always the center figure. The most vividly recollected figures of his childhood is his father, Motilal Nehru. He remembered his father very well, because his father is an embodiment of bravery, because he's a man of very stern and very strict person. And so Nehru did not have any kind of the liberty, freedom to lead his life however he wishes. But his father is always there to mend his ways, to guide him proper way. He is the one who navigates Nehru's to the proper way of living. So that we could see in his father. The most vividly recollected figure of his childhood, he is his father, Motilal Nehru. He remembers him very well. He remembers his father very well. And he admires his father. And he loved and admired his father. But at the same time, feared. He also worried for his father. He scared about him. He scared of him. The towering personality that Motilal was always made the junior Nehru be at his best. The author cites the incident of his stealing a pen from his father's writing table and being severely punished for it. So now he explains one of his, the very interesting experiences, in the childhood, when he steals his father's pen and he severely, punished for that. So this is the first incident that he documents in this autobiography. He begins his autobiography by explaining, by telling the strict personality of his father and how he was punished once when he stole his father's pen. So that you should, remember when you talk about, because if there is a question on, talk about the childhood experiences of Nehru, then you people in a position to explain all these important details about his childhood life. Okay, this is one thing. So further, what happens? So in spite of his anger against the British regime, so we know that, here now we spoke about his childhood experiences, and during his lifetime how he noticed this development of political happening of these British people. So how did he witness them? So in spite of his anger against the British regime, Nehru had no feeling of ill will towards individual Englishmen. In fact, he was born in a family in which English manners and values were advised and followed. So this is how he tells that, he had, that he had no feeling of ill will towards individual Englishmen. In fact, he was born in a family in which English manners and value were advised and followed. So this is how he tells. Most of his tutors and the governors were English people. So his father, the Motilal Nehru, he appoints some governors of English people to teach to his son. So this is a very interesting thing, that, but he imbibed the spirit of Englishness when his own teacher, when the teachers are from England, the British. So in fact, he was born in a family in which English manners and value were advised and followed. So most of his tutors and governors were English. It was F.T. Brooks, an Irishman, who instilled into him the love of books. So he remembers his one of the best teachers, that is, the Brooks. He's one of the best teachers, that is F.T. Brooks, an Irishman. He's an Irishman who instilled in him the love of books. So his teacher is the one who instilled in him the love of a book. How to adore books. How to read book. And how to instill the values of books. So what happened? And initiated him into the mysteries of science. And he's this F.T. Brooke. He's the one who instilled in him, that what is that? The mysteries of science. He's also inculcated the mysteries of science. And then from Brooks talks on theosophy. Brooks, he talks about the divinity, spirituality, the theosophical ideas. Nehru came to realize the value of Hindu religion. Gradually, after he instilled some values of the books, gradually Nehru he realized the value of Hindu religion. And then, and further, at the age of 13, now hope you are getting the gradual, the progress of an autobiography, of its moving towards. So here, because when we talk about his early childhood and in his adolescence and his higher education, and after this his movement in political awakenings, freedom struggle movement, after that is affinity with the Mahatma Gandhi and his jail experiences. And that's how, that his entire autobiography, it collects a lot of details and the collections of information about his personal details. So here at the age of 13 he became a member of the Theosophical Society and attended, its convention at Benares. So he's also tells us that, he also attended, the Theosophical Societies. He was a member and attended a convention at Benares. So this is what Nehru says. Mrs. Annie Besant visited Allahabad in those days and delivered several addresses on theosophical subject. So first time, Nehru, he remembers, these Annie Besant who visited Allahabad in those days and delivered several addresses on theosophical subject. So then he derives the issues, matters related to theosophical subject. And he says that I was deeply moved by her oratory and returned from her speeches dazzled and as in a dream. And he remembers that, he documents that he was deeply inspired by the way she addressed her talk. So remember that. So the way she spoke on the ceremony of initiation. So she has given the best talk on that event, and he remembers as the best situation, as the best remembrance. So after that, at the age of 15, he was sent to Harrow and then on to Cambridge. So the father Motilal Nehru, he decided to send him to the Harrow and then to Cambridge for higher education. So what happens there? So there in the both in Harrow and the Cambridge, Nehru he writes one thing. A prize I got for a good book at school was one of G.M. Trevelyan. G.M. Trevelyan is the great German philosopher. So he got a prize as a good work at school was one of G.M. Trevelyan's book. He got the best book as a prize, book written by G.M. Trevelyan that he documents in this. So that is the very good memory of him, because J.M. Trevelyan is a great writer. He's a German philosopher, and he's a historian also. He's a great writer, and of British literature that we could see here. And after that, here he took the natural science. And which are the subjects that he studied there? He took the natural sciences and the chemistry, zoology and botany. But his interests were not confined to just these. Not only confined to this science subject, he was also brilliant at general knowledge. He used to read a lot of general knowledge studies too. And Nehru evinced keen interest in political development all around the world. So he is not only interested with general studies, he is also understood, the political development around the world, what the political happenings are around the world, that we could see in, that we could see in this autobiography. And after that, what happens? So Nehru evinced the keen interest in political development all around the world. And after that, analyzing his attitude to life at the same time, Nehru says, it was the way kind of you know uh, he was influenced by the writers like Oscar Wilde and Walter Peter. So these people, text. He was influenced by these writers, both Oscar Wilde and Walter Peter, of their, asceticism. Because he was loved towards reading books that we could see, and he was influenced by these writers. After a stay of over 7 years in England, Nehru returned home to practice law at the Allahabad High Court, and he was there almost for how many years? He was there for over 7 years in England, and after that he returned home to practice law at the Allahabad High Court. So he wanted to study law, and he has come back to India after he studied at Harrow and Cambridge. And here we sensed one thing, that Nehru first met Mahatma Gandhi at the Indian National Congress at Lucknow in 1960. This is the first time that Nehru met Mahatma Gandhi. I repeat, Nehru first met Gandhi at an Indian National Congress at Lucknow in 1916. And Gandhi had put forth the program of civil disobedience against the British Rowlatt Act. So Gandhi was the one who was against this, against the Rowlatt Act, and he put forth this program called civil disobedience. And Nehru followed the movement with a great enthusiasm. Nehru also plunged into action, and he decided to be a part of it. But the idea of giving his time totally to the freedom movement was objected to his father, Motilal Nehru, because early of his age, it is his prime youth to gain his higher education, higher studies, to do his studies in law and all that. But whereas Nehru's, he decided to be a part of this national struggle movement against this Rowlatt Act. What happened? But Motilal Nehru, he doesn't lie. He was objected his son to be part of all these things. And what happens here? And he writes that for many days there was this mental conflict. And because of both of us felt the big issue involving a complete upsetting of our lives. So he had always had this, conflict with his father, because when the father objected him to be part of this political movement. We tried hard to be considerable to each other as possible. He's talking about his father. I wanted to lessen his obvious suffering as I could, but I had no doubt in my mind that I had to go the way of satyagraha and he decided to be plunged to involve with this satyagraha. Both of us had a distressing time, and night after night, I wondered about alone, torturing my mind and trying to grope my way out. Gandhi came to Allahabad at father's request. So once Gandhi came, as the father requested him to be there, and they had long talks at which I was not present. So they had discussion, but Motilal Nehru and the Gandhi had a discussion. And what happens here? And he said I wasn't present then. As a result, Gandhi advised me not to participate matters or do not anything which might upset father. So this is the first incident, if there is questions on, then how Gandhi, I mean Nehru confronts his father, short questions or short notes, you have to write this incident. It's a very important incident where, Gandhi advised him after he had a discussion with Motilal Nehru. What does he say to Nehru here? He said that Gandhi advised me not to participate matters or to do anything which might upset father. So you should listen to your father because it may upset to him. So then Nehru did join the non-cooperation movement, and then it gave him the immense satisfaction to be working for the freedom of the country. So after some time, he doesn't hurt his father, but gradually, Nehru he joined the non-cooperation movement, and it gave him immense satisfaction to be the working for the freedom of the country. So that gave him a very kind of liberation, freedom to work for his own country. So the non-cooperation movement had a great impact on Nehru. This is how he writes in his autobiography. So this non-cooperation movement had a great impact on Nehru. He says that the moral and ethical side of the movement, which included satyagraha, gave him a great deal of satisfaction. So now we could understand that the Nehru was a great patriot. The patriotism he celebrates here. He says that the non-cooperation movement had a great impact on Nehru. He says that the moral and the ethical side of the movement, because this movement was conducted for the good thing, for the well-being of the nation and the people, for the whole folk, and which included satyagraha, gave him a great deal of satisfaction. It gives him sense of compassion, I mean, complacency. And but the writer makes it clear that he did not give an absolute allegiance to the doctrine of violence, and then, nor was he prepared to accept it forever. Nehru always kept it in mind the fact that the ultimate goal of non cooperation was national freedom and the ending of exploitations of the underdog, and it gives him a sense of personal freedom. So ultimately, what happens? So the non-cooperation movement, the purpose was Nehru. The what kept in his mind was that that the ultimate goal of non-cooperation was national freedoms movement. That is a national freedom and ending of the exploitation. There should be no exploitation of the people, and 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 here they have to get the national freedom struggle movement. So this is one thing that we get that in this early chapters of Nehru's and autobiography. So dear student, there'll be questions on for your examination perspective, point of view. For example, so far whatever I have described, there'll be questions like describe Nehru's childhood experiences and give a detailed account of Nehru's academic pursuit at Harrow and the Cambridge. And and after that, you can even say that how he had his confrontation with his father and how he met Mahatma Gandhi. So all these things are very, very important. Hope you're able to follow this of and gradually, and how Nehru's Gandhi's relationship it strengthened. That is another facet, other the phase of this autobiography. So how they come closer and how this so Jawaharlal Nehru admired and respected Mahatma Gandhi, though they did have their differences. They did have their own differences. They say that he writes that in chapter 10, in spite of his unimpressive features, there was a loyalty and a kingliness in him, which compelled a willing, him to be with him. So he sensed some sort of, good nature in Mahatma Gandhi, a kind of, the goodness in him, and he decided to be with him. And Nehru always had a deep emotional attachment to Gandhi. So this is another important that Nehru explains that here. His attachment towards Gandhi. So in the autobiography, the presentations of the Nehru-Gandhi relationship it is ultimately based on mature endurances, mature endurance. So here they have the kind of patience. They equally, there is a mutual, respect one another, and their bondage, it strengthened there. That's what he says here. So after that, in fact, after his involvement with Gandhi's affinity with the Gandhi, then how was his friend of Asad? In fact, Nehru is at his best while writing about his jail experiences. So we are come to know about the different dimensions, different facets of Nehru's life here. So what about in jail experiences, in prison experiences? Here, Nehru is at his best while writing about his jail experiences. He was very good at talking about his jail experiences. He spent several years, and behind the bars. He was behind the bars, I mean prisons, and the fact that he wrote the most of his autobiography in jail. So this is the another important issue, is that the entire most of the autobiography, this autobiography, is written in jail itself. He completes this in jail. Of course, in my beginning of my lecture, I mentioned the year and month also. And in jail has set the tone of the book. So boredom is an inevitable experience in the solitude of the jail. So he experienced that the boredom and the solitudeness in jail itself. But the author kept himself occupied in reading and writing. But this man, he doesn't keep away from reading literature and writing. He was involved himself in writing and reading. So this is one of the important the traits, the qualities, the best writings quality of Nehru's, that even at the jail he kept reading and writing. And what happens here? So now Nehru reflects on how different countries have adopted different animals. After that, I am picking up only important episode, which gives you the complete substance of the entire autobiography. I'm not taking every chapters in detail because it's such a voluminous text. I am discussing only important, the crucial episodes, and you can read them, and you can listen and understand, and immediately you read the study materials and you understand better. So Nehru reflects on how different countries have adopted different animals as a symbol of their character. For example, he tells that the eagle of the United States of America, so different countries have different animals to represent the country, and the eagle of the United States of America, he tells. And after that, the Germany, the lion, and the bulldog of England, and the fighting cock of France, and the bear of old Russia. So these countries, for example, USA and Germany, and then England, the France and the Russia, these countries have the symbol of their country, animals. They keep the different animals as the symbol of their character. As I told you, the eagle of United States of America, and the Germany, the lion, and the bulldog of England, and then the fighting cock of France, and the bear of old Russia, and so on. So after that, Nehru is also talking about his experiences in a chapter called Naini Prison. Naini Prison is an important chapter. The way Nehru, he discusses his different experiences there. What does he say here? In the chapter entitled Naini Prison, we have yet another example of the author's observant eye. We understand his keen observe ion when he describes the architect of the prison. It's circular rather than the rectangular shape, adding to the sense of oppression, like being at the bottom of a well. So what happens here? Here he is keen observation on, see the entire the shape of the Neni prison. He talks about the prison, and look, we understand that how, despite of his boredom and all that, this man, he involves himself in observing every minute things which are around in Neni prison, and he talks about the shape of the wall and all that, this entire Neni prison. And after that, the author talks about his political struggle movement. So, what does he say in his political struggle movement? He says that the author comments on satyagraha as a basis for political action. He says that the author comments on satyagraha as a basis for political action. So through political, through satyagraha, he plunged into this political action. And what does he say here? Satyagraha was a definite, though a non-violent form of resistance. So here there is no violence; it is a non-violence. Satyagraha was a definite, though non-violent, form of resistance to what was considered wrong. It was, in effect, a peaceful rebellion, a most civilized form of warfare, and yet dangerous to the stability of the state. So here Satyagraha is a non-violent movement, but it's a very strong and powerful to against this British regime. It was an effective way of getting the masses to function, and it seemed to fit in with the peculiar genius of the Indian people. It puts us on our best behavior and seemed to put the adversary in the wrong. It made us shed and fear and crushed us, and we began to look people in the face as we had never done before, and to speak out our minds fully and frankly. And finally, the method of peace prevented. So the fundamental aspects of satyagraha is to project is to proclaim the peace and violence. That is the weapon in order to against this British system, and that he talks about in his chapter on political struggle movement. And finally, the method of peace preventing to the large extent the growth of those terribly bitter racial and national hatreds which had accompanied such struggles and thus made the ultimate settlement easier. So this is how they could win over, they could vanquish the British people through their non-violence. So here another important chapter. What is that? One of the most revealing chapters in the book is the descriptions of his first experience of a lathi charge. It was in 1927, the year of Simon Commission. So now we come to know that how Nehru talks about is another important experience that he had undergone during the Simon Commission. What? It's a Lati experience, Lati charge. So what happens here? Here is that one of the most revealing chapters in the book is the descriptions of his first experience of a Lati charge. It was in 1927, the year of the Simon Commission. And how does he explain here? I read out these experiences from the text. My own instinct had urged me to seek safety when I saw the horses, charging down upon us, the people moving around, the horses charging down upon us. It was a discouraging sight. It was a very horrible sight. The entire Simon Commission, and when he is taking the protest against this British regime, and it was a very discouraging sight. But then, I suppose, some other instinct held me to my place, and I survived at the first charge. But his instinct, his impulse is the by his quality, his feelings tells him just to be part of it. When had been checked by the volunteers behind me, suddenly I found myself alone in the middle of the road, a few yards away from me in various directions, or the policemen beating down our volunteers. So he says that the police people, they're beating the volunteers one by one. And then automatically I began moving slowly to the side of the road to be less conspicuous. And he also tries to slowly go by side. But again I stopped and had a little argument with myself. So he decided, let me not be timid. Let me plunge into action. Let me take the, this precision. I had the clearest okay, he said that I stopped and had a little argument with myself and decided that it would be unbecoming for me to move away. All this was a matter of few seconds only. But I have the clearest recollections of the conflict within me, and that the decision prompted me by my pride, I suppose. Yes, I should take the part of it. Doesn't matter whether the police will use the lathi charge, the lathi charge, or whether they beat him or not. I suppose which could not tolerate the idea of my behaving like a coward. I should not be a coward. I should take the lead. Yet the line between the coward eyes and the courage was a thin one, and I might well be on the other side. So I want to be a courageous because his father was a epitome of courage. Father was an embodiment of courage. So he decided to be the man of courage, and he decided to take the movement. But these few chapters do not impair the flow of narratives. So there are some chapters which are not completely talks about his movement. The incidents are switch over to other topics. So Nehru mentions the fact that the struggle for freedom continued, irrespective of the fact that the leaders were imprisoned and sliced pretext and the slightest pretext. Some people were involving in this movement. They were all they were arrested, they were imprisoned, they were captured. It was this repression without a break and with ever increasing intensity which demonstrated the basis of British rule in India. As he observes, it was better that we should be governed as we thought that we should sell our souls and submit to spiritual. We decided, let us not be a covered eyes. Let us take the matter and let us fight with bravery. So that because this is our country, and this is what this chapter talks about. So far, whatever I have described, as a student, if you there'll be questions like you can detail an account of Nehru-Gandhi relationship, and after that, descriptions of nature and its importance, and how different animals represent different countries, and how Nehru's present experiences, and how the Simon Commission's his involvement, he against the Simon Commission, and his involvement with what it's like Satyagraha movement and all that. It are important cause the issues that can be discussed in the previous chapters. So now here for Nehru, India was so now we have this issue called religion. So what does his opinion about religion and secularism? He said that my religion is the tolerance of all religions, creeds, and philosophies. So he says that my religion is the tolerance of all religions, but he is not completely stick to a particular religion. He is the true practitioner of the human celebrations to humanity. So that is his religion. My religion is the tolerance of all religions, creeds, and philosophers. From a recent article in a book called Nehru's Revisited, published by Nehru Center. You know, um, so this is a criticism on Nehru's center, where they have published an article that you could get in the study materials. This is there, and after that, here we have. So now we understood one thing, that my religion is the tolerance of all religion, the creed and philosophies. So that is the true doctrine of Nehru's philosophy is. So now for Nehru, India was supposed to be a religious country above everything else, where the Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and others took pride in their respective faith. So he says that India is a multicultural country, multi-religion country. So look at that. India is supposed to be a religious country, and above everything else, where okay, this is the voice is not audible. Okay, and could be some internet connection. So the morning also we have the same problem. Okay, hope now the voice is clear. The voice is audible. So I can keep sending it. Okay, you can just send some messages if the voice is not clear. Hope now it's clear. Okay, and now he says that the way the Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and others took pride in their respective faith. But what filled Nehru with horror was organized religion, which he condemned. A religion where dogma, bigotry. Okay, the voice is not clear. Okay, let me rejoin again. Okay, dear students, sorry, there was some internet connection and there is a low network connection, so the voice was breaking. But now, is it okay? The voice is clear? You can just drop a message in the chat if the voice is clear. So he found that India is filled with different religions and all that, and he decides to bring it in one platform, and he has to probably then only the India can get success against this British system. This is his attention towards culminations of all religion in one. And after that, we have this writer called Sarojini Naidu, and Naidu says Sarojini Naidu. He says that had some touching words to say about Nehru on his 50th birthday, and she tells one thing about his on his the 50th birthday, and she said that you are a man of destiny, the bound to be alone in the midst of crowds, deeply loved but little understood. One of the most poignant and personal moments is found in his reference to the death of Kamla after much suffering due to her prolonged illness. So here we know that first time we come to know about the Kamala Nehru's and Nehru's wife who died due to sickness. So here Sarojini Naidu tells about Nehru saying that you are a man of destiny, born to be alone in the midst of crowd, deeply loved but little understood, because he's the one who's the complex thing in India was then has Nehru himself tells that India with many religions and different vested interest. Look at that, the bigotry, superstition, exploitation, and then form the preservations of vested interest. So in order to solve all the problem was not easy for for them. So there was a large sector of people, large number of people had to go against in order to give some messages to create oneness among the people in order to get the freedom from this British people. And she tells that you're a man of destiny. And one of the most poignant personal moments is found in his reference to the death of Kamala after much suffering due to her prolonged illness. So Kamala Nehru, she died of due to sickness, ill health, that we could see here. And here, the Nehru's autobiography is the most central of his work, mainly because the public and the private images of him are organically infused in it. So, as Mulkraj Anand points out, that Nehru seems to have adopted his own life as an experiment in history making and written this famous book. So, here, Mulkraj Anand's very important observation on Nehru's autobiography is that Nehru seems to have adopted his own life as an experiment in history making and written this famous book. That's what he says here. And after that, dear students, so far I've described whatever all these important incidents of Nehru's autobiography, and I told you Nehru's autobiography is it's a documentation of his the political history and his national freedom struggle movement, and and then his and he's become the first prime minister of India, and his the role in bringing the freedom struggle, the freedom to India. So here the chapters like the early chapters of this entire book. For example, you have his descent from Kashmir, and after that the Harrow and the Cambridge experiences, and after this Naini prisons experiences, and after that you have Nehru Gandhi's relationship, and all these are very, very important in this entire book, that is Nehru's autobiography. So here I just want to say one thing. For example, in your exam point of view, there are some questions to be asked. For example, the questions could be like trace the mental growth and development of a writer in his autobiography. So how does he express his the development of a great writer, a good writer, development of the writer, and this as an individual, as a writer and as an individual, that you should remember. For which, in case if there is a question on attempts on this individual and the mental development, personality, you people have to answer in such away to your questions. For example, that is one question, and another question. The questions would be like, Nehru's sensitiveness and artistic temperament in his autobiography, and after that, you have another important questions like the merits of Nehru's autobiography. What are the merits of Nehru's autobiography? And after that, there is another question: is Nehru's mastery of English language and his prose style. How could he write such an epic kind of a book or an autobiography, and how he could succeed in it? So here I must tell one word of Rabindranath Tagore's words on this an autobiography. Then I will switch over to how you can, what are the topics that you can bring in your, you can write in your examination point of view, and how you can prepare an answer for a question. So that for this. So again, the voice is not clear. That's what you say. So here, what happens? The Nehru's autobiography. Here is a word of Rabindranath Tagore, that the entire book, Tagore says, is the entire autobiography is intensely impressed by this great book, which he said runs a deep current of humanity. That's what he said. This whole book, it runs a deep current of humanity. And in the epilogue, we have the author writing, saying that I have reached the end of the story, this egotistical narrative of my adventures throughout this life, such as there has been brought up to the today, February 14th, 1935. So 1935 is the date when Nehru ends his great classic. This text he wrote. This is another important thing that you should remember. So here are some incidents that I must tell you people. So here, for example, the number one is yeah. So what was this? I told you about his jail experiences. So let me emphasize on his jail experiences a bit for a while, and then I move on to other description on how to write a question to an answer. So Nehru is at best while writing about his jail experiences. So his writing potentiality, writing craftsmanship was the very good when he was there in the jail, because there he cultivated the habit of fine writing. He spent several years behind the bars, and the fact that he wrote most of his autobiography in jail has set the tone of the book. The boredom is an inevitable experience in the solitude of a jail, but the author kept himself occupied in reading and writing. And then animals in prison, the way Nehru speaks of wasps and hornets and even bats. So all this, the creatures were there in this. He writes about Adventure Song, the squirrel, which would, while he sat reading without moving for a considerable period of time on his knee. So here are some animals, the insect and bats and all that, they move around while he was writing his autobiography in jail. And I also told you that the importance of satyagraha, which was defined as non-violent form of resistance. Here is the form of resistance to non-violence, to the atrocities of British regime. To what was considered wrong, it was in fact a peaceful rebellion, a most civilized form of warfare, and yet dangerous to the stability of the state. So that we could understand. So it made us shed for the fear that crushed us, and we began to look people in the face as we had never done before, and to speak out our minds fully and frankly. And finally, the method of peace prevented to a large extent the growth of these terrible, bitter racial and national hatreds, and which had accompanied with struggles and thus made the ultimate settlements easier. So this is how the series of movement struggles, through satyagraha, they got liberations from these British people, and gradually. So now let me come back to the first question I told you just earlier, that if there is a questions on the trace the mental development as an individual and as a writer, how you have, what are the things that you should keep in your mind to answer your questions. So this is one. So this autobiography begins with a brief account of Nehru's ancestors and covers the story of life from his birth to his imprisonment. So this is the first thing that, hope the voice is clear. Your people are listening me carefully. Voice is clear and there is no disturbance as such. So what happened? This is how you have to start is answering to the question that I said. Autobiography begins with a brief account of Nehru's ancestors. It talks about his ancestry, and they're from the ancestry from the Kashmir, and covered the story of his life from his birth to his. Voice is not clear. Okay. And do students, I do one thing. I rejoin again. Okay. So I was saying this, because in the beginning itself, he has that the very prosperous parents, and he has all advantages by birth, and this is how you have to remember very carefully that how the entire story of his life from birth, from his birth to his imprisonment. This is one important component. The whole autobiography, it's a documentation of his from birth to his imprisonment, and on son of prosperous parents. As the autobiography remarks at the beginning, he is apt to be spoiled, especially so in India. Although this seems to be a good introductory remark, it proves quite the opposite in the case of Nehru himself. It is remarkable that in spite of all the chances which he had for getting spoiled, Nehru grew to be one of the most illustrious sons of modern India. And this is a very important line that you also remember, dear students. And remember, hope now the voice is clear. This is what he says. And so although this seems to be the good introductory remark, what is that? He was born with his golden silver spoon. It proves quite the opposite in the case of Nehru himself. It is a remarkable that in spite of all the chances which he had for getting spoiled, Nehru grew up to be one of the most illustrious sons of modern India. So though he is all witness and he wasn't selfish, he plunged into this political movement. And after that, the voice is not clear. Okay, just tell me once again if the voice is not clear. So what can be done? I think probably this is all happening due to the poor network connection here. You can just tell me again if it is continuous again. You can just resend me them again, message again. So, dear students, and I know I was telling this, how Nehru he made use of his, the very sophisticated and very stabilized way of life in order to be a very predominant figure in this political movement of in India. So he also remembers, because when you talk about his personality, it's very crucial to remember his Ferdinand D. Brooks, his teacher. He remembers his teacher, that Ferdinand D. Brooks, Brookes. He's a teacher, and he's a tutor, the resident tutor of Nehru. And he had in his home a little laboratory where he used to spend long and interesting hours working out experiments in elementary physics and chemistry. And he had even advantages even at home. He had a laboratory where he works elementary physics and elementary chemistry. And you Nehru, taking an interest in theosophy and asking his father's permission to become a theosophist, makes interesting reading. Okay, still the problem persists. Okay, and I continue further. Okay, and I continue further. His teachers, uh, okay, dear students, if there are a lot of technical issues, I stop the session, and hope we have given you the study materials, and you can read and you can make use of for your examination point of view. And whenever that you have a doubt to ask, you can even visit the department to. Okay, I hope now is the voice is clear. Because I get the message from our own operators, internal operator, that the voice is clear. Is it fine now? Is the voice is clear? So. I was telling that he had he was even taking his father permission to be a part of theosophical movement. So it is a remarkable, even at the very young age, Nehru had taken an interest in problems of the world around. So that shows his maturity. That shows his the growth of his mind. Is the voice is clear? Yes. Okay, I'm very happy that the voice is clear. And this is another important. See now his the mental growth is such a way that remember the what he says. It is a remarkable even at the very young age, Nehru had taken an interest in problems of the world around him, and that his mind was filled with the nationalistic ideals. And contrast these pictures of young Nehru, who had read most of the interesting books in English literature, and whose mind was very much preoccupied with the problems of the contemporary world. Remember, I told when he had been to, Harrow and the Cambridge, though he has studied science subject and his mind is always thinks about this contemporary, the society, the contemporary general knowledge. And here is an interesting note that, the in Nehru, he read a lot of interesting books in English literature, and whose mind was very much preoccupied with the problems of the contemporary world. So the problems of the contemporary world, that he was very much aware of that. In Harvard and Cambridge, Nehru's general attitude to the life becomes much more crystallized. There he refined his mannerisms. There he cultivated good habits in Harvard and Cambridge. Life in Cambridge shows Nehru as a highly sensitive and a shy young man, very closely watching the events in India, but not being able to discuss them with anybody. This is another interesting qualities that the maturity that he developed over a period of time. What is that? In Ireland, Cambridge, Nehru's general attitude to the life becomes much more crystallized. Life in Cambridge shows Nehru as a highly sensitive and a shy young man, very closely watching the events of India, but not being able to discuss with anybody because probably he wasn't getting the right kind of person to share his viewpoints. Is no? And the story of Nehru's return to India is coming under the influence of Mahatma Gandhi, and his gradual involvement in the struggle of freedom movement have now become the part of our national history. So these are the things how Nehru he started instilling in his mind that the habit of good reading and good books, and which talks about the contemporary problems, and decided to solve the problems to all these the questions, and that we could see that. And now, if there is a question called talk about as a sensitive and artistic temperament, what was his artistic temperament? What is his sensitiveness? If that is the case, if there is a question on that, is about especially about his artistic temperament, what's supposed to be written? This is out. Number one, the whole autobiography was written in a matter of 9 months. The matter of 9 months, and then And his artistic temperament, remember, this artistic writing capacity was such a strong and very brilliant, that he could able to write such a huge, a book which has around more than, it's I think it's more than how many pages. It is around 655 pages book he has written in around almost within 9 months in his prison experiences. That shows his temperaments. That shows his artistic merit. So the whole autobiography was written in a matter of 9 months as a task of set of himself, by his political prisoner at his, the prison days. Nehru's political activity, forcibly stopped by the British Raj, gives place here to an intellectual activity. So the moment British kept him behind the bars, he enriches, he enhances his intellectual activity. Intellectual activity in the sense his intellectual potentiality, writing, that he enhanced and completed the autobiography, therefore is appropriately dedicated, to the memory of Kamala, who is no more. So he dedicates the book to the Kamala Nehru, who is no more because she died due to sick. And Nehru was a patriot. He was a true patriot. He was also a sensitive humanist. He was a sensitive humanist, a thinker and a writer with a poetic bent of mind. With a very poetic bent of mind. He's a man of a poet. He's a man of a, a writer. He's a writer and a poetic bent of mind. And his the rare historic sense raises even a stray incident to the highest of the general and the universal. He's the one who finds a problem for all the universal problem. Such was his, potentiality developed. And now, another important thing is, the three strands in the content of the autobiography. Nehru's autobiography is neither a chronological account of the independence struggle, nor it is systematic life story of an individual. It is both and more. What is that? The three different strands can be identified in the narrative. The first, the distinctly biographical strands include such as his childhood, Harrow and the Cambridge, and the wedding, imprisonment in Europe, and death of Motilal Nehru. So all that is, gives him a kind of a strength, and he, started, taking he's taking a active part in his involvement with the political movement of the country. So this is how we could see that how he gathered courage in his approach. So after that, his prison animals in prison, that Nehru's love for nature, his capacity to drown personal sorrow in observing the activities of the nature. So he has a special concern for nature. He loves beauty of the nature. He adores beauty of the nature, the delicacy of his feelings and the artistic temperaments. That we could see when he, when he ones with the nature, when he surrendered himself to the nature, when he, being in the jail, he enjoys with, the surroundings of these, nature. That we could see in him. And after that, see, this is the wasps, the hornets, the bugs, and the mosquitoes in the jail, getting familiar with every bit of the cell in which he lived for 14 and a half months. Nehru discovers that he was not alone there, and the colonies of wasps and hornets were fellow beings. He says that these were my fellow beings. The other, the insect, or the these are things like, we were there in wasps, hornets, bugs, and mosquitoes. These were his, fellow companions. He says, and as they did not interfere with his life, he decided not to interfere with theirs. So they did not interfere with him, and so does he. But between him and the bedbugs, mosquitoes, and some extent with the flies, there were a continuous warfare. So he also tells that he had a lot of struggle in living in jail. He has undergone a lot of problems as well. But despite he doesn't think them as a problem. He rather took it in a very, very the better way. And as I told you, in a positive way, that he wouldn't shirk for all this, the conditions of the jail. And another important information, when we say that his artistic temperament, we can see the way he mentions that, in his mind moves on to the symbolic animals and birds of a different nationalities. He also talks about how different, animals and the birds or represent some nationalities. The eagles of the USA, and the Germany, the lion, and the bulldog of Britain, the fighting cock of France, and the bear of Russia, and do the patron animals the mold national characters? He asked the question: does it true the way do they represent the country? Is it true? Is it validated? It is surprising that the passive Hindu should have chosen a cow. That's how he calls cow as a national animal of Hindu. That you have to he puts an interrogative mark over there. So there is another question, merits of Nehru's autobiography. What are the merits of Nehru's autobiography here? That is the last question in my entire presentation. After that, I just close this session. So Nehru's autobiography, the merits are the one. So apart from being a political leader, a great influence, Nehru was a gifted writer of English prose. He was a very gifted writer, and he was endowed with vision, imagination, and artistic temperament. Thus, while the importance of events in which he is concerned lends an importance to the story of his life, his gifts as a writer makes it one of the most readable among the prose works in Indian writing in English. And his contribution, that is in this autobiography, it is read in the Indian writing in English. It is often claimed that even if Nehru had not entered public life, he would have attained the same distinction if he had, taken to writing as a whole-time occupation. Of course, if he had taken as a writer as an occupation, he could have succeeded in it. And here is a famous line written by Cowley. He's a critic, and he says that Nehru begins his autobiography by quoting Cowley's words. What does Cowley say that? He said that it is hard and nice subject for a man to write of himself. It grates his own heart to say anything of disparagement, and the reader's ears to hear anything of his the praise for him. So this is the word of the Cowley that mentioned in his autobiography. That is, that you could see in the beginning of his autobiography itself. That you could read it in the textbooks too. It is given over there. And after that, and you have you should remember his chapters on Harrows, Cambridge, and other experiences. And here another, but it's remarkable that even while dealing with what may be called the most prosaic problems, he maintains a sense of isolation, which gives to his autobiography a chief merit, literary merit. So this autobiography gives him a very much a literary merit that we could see him. And his the death of Kamala Nehru's illness and her death gives the autobiography to touch of tender pathos. So even we could see that he was so sensitive person. The death of his wife, itself is he mentions here, it is the touch of his the tender pathos. That's what we could see here. And the last question here we have, in case if they ask about the Nehru's mastery of English language, and you should also remember that he had practically finished his the general studies at the age of 12. He has finished all major studying in his age of 12. No doubt this abstination, the abstention on his part had been of use of the gallant English colonial in avoiding the troublesome thoughts, and perhaps it helped him to subsequently in rising to the position of Inspector General of Prisons of United Province. So what happens here? We could know that he's the one who had all the advantages, all the facilities to be in the, because he had been to the British colonies, the British, the his higher education in Oxford and the Cambridge. But despite of all that, and he had this special mastery over his language, his potentiality of English language, his command over his English language, that we could see in this entire autobiography. So he's the man who is use of gallant English colonial. I'm sorry, there is one particular line where he says that no doubt this abstention on his part had been of the use of the English language in avoiding troublesome thoughts, and perhaps it helped him subsequently in rising the position. So here he uses a very gallant, a very good English language in terms of giving a better clarity in his writing this autobiography. And dear students, so this is where I stop the session. And so far, I discussed the entire the text of Nehru's autobiography. And so here you have this text, and I strongly advise you to read this text and whenever you have your spare time, because this is a voluminous text, and you find the time to read this entire text much before you read these study materials. So this is the entire, but in this preface there is one particular line that it says that, Nehru himself, he writes in his preface, I trust that this book will revive something of the past in the minds of many of those of the newer generation who did not have personal experience of what it describes. So this is the line that he talks about the entire book. And so this is a general interest to the many people in India because it deals with a period of our national struggle in which many of us were personally involved. So this is how he mentions in his autobiography. So this is the entire text that is a Nehru's autobiography. So dear student, I stop the session now. If you have one or two questions that you can raise, then you can ask me so that I end the talk. And you will have the next session, next class too. So hope this entire class was benefited and it useful for your exam point of view, and you got many informations on this particular text. So I wish you all the best. Do well in your exam, and see you people. Yes, I'm going to close the session, and you have a next session at 3:30, and do attend the class, all the sessions, and I wish you good luck. Do very well in your examination. Thank you, people. I'm going to close the session.
Very good evening, students. Students, am I audible? Yeah. Very good evening, students. Welcome to the last class of the day, open elective. Being the first year students, since morning, our teachers are very busy in engaging the classes to you people. Since first semester students, you're studying lots of things in your open elective. You are given lots of things, you have been given lots of scope to study in your open elective. Many students are from different fields. Many of you belong to science, many of you belong to commerce stream, many of you belong to different streams. But you have taken English for your open elective. I'm very happy to note that you are selected and you have enrolled yourself for open elective. Remember, to study English literature, you should have a blessing, because you're going to study Indian English literature. The topics are not quite difficult for you. Why one has to study English literature? And I believe there must be a question arising in your mind. Being in science stream, or I belong to chemistry or mathematics, MBA, I belong to different stream, geography, and why I need to study, and what is the link between literature and science? The answer is very simple. We should know the other topics as well, other subjects as well. You might be finishing your open elective exams within 2 semesters, but at the end of the second semester, and you are going to be enriched with knowledge. You're going to be enriched with knowledge. That's why we have given Indian English literature. You're going to study Shakuntala, you're going to study Mrichakatika, you're going to study about an autobiography of Jawaharlal Nehru, and you're going to study minutes on India's education, address to the Parliament of Religions. Only there are 2 blocks for you. First block consists of 2, it's quite bulky text, and the second one, the block number 2, consists of minor one, except Nehru's autobiography. We have given lots of scope where you can learn all the things about Indian English literature. When we look into literature, literature is divided into many groups. There is Indian literature, there is British literature, there is a Caribbean literature, there is an American literature, and lots of literary pieces are produced and published throughout the world. We are here in 21st century. There are so many writers who have written in 15th century or 13th century, but still we are learning and we are reading those texts. For example, when we look into William Shakespeare's plays, most of us have gone through it, or most of us utilize his dialogues or his sayings in every or day-to-day conversation. Wherever the university you are enrolled to, one of his plays are there in the syllabus prescribed for the study. Most of his plays are very famous. He has written 37 plays and 154 sonnets. To name few, I'll come back to the main topic which I'm going to deal today. Out of 37 plays, most of his plays we might have learned or read or listened or studied. Learned, listened, studied, or heard the story. Or we might have watched on YouTube. King Lear, Romeo Juliet, The Merchant of Venice, Macbeth, Much Ado About Nothing, The Twelfth Night, As You Like It, Richard II, Henry IV, and all these famous plays of Shakespeare we have read. You might have read in your degree level as well. It was written during 15th century or 14th century, and why we need to study now? Students, remember, literature is a connecting bridge to the past. Where we can see what kind of society that was existing in those days. Apart from the story, we can get the theme. We can get some morals. Remember, every author has a purpose of leaving a message to the readers behind. Readers behind. So we have all the sorts of things. You have been given 6 topics for your first semester and another 7 topics for your second semester. Interdisciplinary course open elective Indian Literature 1, where I'm going to discuss with you a beautiful essay written by Raja Ram Mohan Roy entitled Letter to Lord Hammerest. Before we actually discuss quite deeply into it, let us understand who is Raja Ram Mohan Roy and why he has written this particular text. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is usually referred to as the father of modern India. He is one of the India's greatest religious, social, and educational reformers and the prophet of new age. He is a well-known social reformer. He was also the first writer of Bengali to use a polemical style. He is the first person to translate the Bhagavad Gita into Bengali verse, and he also composed some devotional songs. He has also written some Bengali grammar book, the best available of his time. and all his literary piece of work remains in some aspects unsurpassed even today. We should understand, being a social reformer, he had a special purpose in his mind. Raja Ram Mohan Roy had a special purpose in his mind, realizing that a radical reform of the existing educational system was necessary to modernize Indian society. In the letter which we are going to discuss today, he has written this particular letter to Lord Hammerest in order to protest against the ruling regent's decision to open a Sanskrit college in Kolkata. He had a different notion in his mind. He had a special purpose in his mind. And he also has written the second letter to Lord Minto, and it also brings out another aspect of British rule, that is racial arrogance of the colonial regime. There is one more letter written by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Here we will deeply discuss and understand about this short essay and a short letter, which is about 2.5 pages. What he has written and what he's talking about. Before we go in detail, let us understand Indian culture, India's people, what kind of people those were living in India, and how India is far, far, far better than the other countries in comparison with previously. Remember, India is a country, or India is a land which gave shelter to so many people. India has its own histories to pond through. India is a land of villages. India is a land which is ruled by lots of kings, starting from southern part of India to Delhi or to Kashmir. Different people, Cholas, Chalukas, and Wadiyas, lots of kings, they ruled India. When they were ruled, we had a peaceful life. We had a peaceful life. But once the British people set their foot on Indian soil, the peace and harmony of India is shattered. Remember, British people came into India for trading purpose or business purpose. When they came to India, they did not have the intention of ruling Indian people. They thought that they will get something or which we are going to be benefited. They came here with the purpose of business, and later they became the owners. The owners have become the servants. For many centuries, we were ruled by the British. That's what I keep on repeating. That is, the sun of English empire never sets. That means the English people were ruling throughout the globe. Wherever they go, the English people were ruling. To particularly to speak about India, they were ruled by them for many centuries or many years. Then we got the independence with lots of struggle, with lots of sacrifices from different people. We are given independence in the year 1947. And after 47, we had the freedom. It is also divided into two divisions, pre-independent era and post-independent era. What kind of life the people were leading in the post-independent era, pre-independent era, and what kind of life the people are leading now, that is post-independent era. British people had their own rules and regulations to be carried out in India while they were ruling us. We need to obey them. We are under the clutches of the British. If something goes wrong, we will be punished. We are not given any freedom of choice or freedom of movement, freedom of speech. Even we cannot get the proper education according to our own wish. The entire education system is spoiled. Remember, in India, we used to follow the Gurukul system. What is Gurukul system? There was a guru in the Gurukula where the people used to, or the students used to go there. They used to go there and get education. There were no benches as such. There was no proper education, and the people are educated openly in the environment where all the students during the Gurukul system of education are given or taught the values of life. We had only the subjects that are prevailing in India. We never had the access to subjects like physics, chemistry, biotechnology, and all the other technical fields. We had the system of learning only Sanskrit, the local languages, some of the value-based subjects that are prescribed in the system of education in pre-independent era. But lots of reformers, even during pre-independent era or after independent era, and they wanted to bring some radical change in the educational policies of India. That's why Raja Ram Mohan Roy is considered to be one of the greatest social reformers. He wanted to bring some radical changes in the educational system of India. Let us go in detail about the letter. It is already, it has been already pointed out that before the new educational policy was implemented, the government of India supported instruction in the classical Indian languages. And we are told that India is going to get the education only in the Indian languages. And there was an order passed by the British people that they are going to start a new Sanskrit university in Kolkata, which made Raja Ram Mohan Roy angry. He rose against, to protest against the order of the British people. Why do you want to open a new Sanskrit college in India? Do you think Indian people are going to be benefited from learning only the Sanskrit? We want students to be exposed to different subjects like mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, all the things. Then only our students will prove to be a genius people in India. And that let us see how he argues logically from the beginning till the end. So when you look into this particular, Raja Ram Mohan Roy's letter to Lord Hammerest, and let me read out a few lines from the letter. And this particular letter was written to Lord Hammerest in the year 1823, 11th of December. 11th of December. And he just writes, Lord, humbly reluctant as the native of India are to obtrude upon the notice of government the sentiments are entertained on any public measure, there are circumstances when silence would be carrying respectful feeling to culpable exercise. The present rulers of India, remember, he is addressing the British people. That means he's telling that we, the people of India, are quite silent about the things that are done. There he tells the present rulers of India coming from a distance of many thousand miles to gown a people whose language, literature, manners, customs, and ideas are almost entirely new and strange to them, cannot easily become so intimately acquainted with the real circumstances as the gross direction of duty to ourselves, and afford our rules just ground of the complaint at our apathy. And he keeps on telling, you are the rulers of India who have traveled from thousands and thousands and the thousands of miles. You have come here to rule us, and the people's language, culture, manners, customs, the ideas are entirely different from you people. You don't have the apathy on us or sympathy on us. And he keeps on explaining, thus by a local language and experience, they are declared benevolent intentions for its improvement. That means you people are imposing the rules and regulations on us, but whereas you people don't have that kind of things where it is going to be introduced for us to create a scope for improvement. That means you don't have the manners of India. You haven't learned because you have recently come from British people. You people are ruling us. But why can't you act according to the wish and thinking capacity of India? And it further tells in the third or fourth stanzas or paragraph of the letter, and it tells the Sanskrit language is difficult, that most lifetime is necessary for the perfect to become a perfection. Just tells that, why are you going to start a new Sanskrit college? Is it too difficult for an Indian to learn? It points out logically in a good manner and how Rajaram Mohan Rai knows how to eat the nail. And he keeps on telling. It has already been pointed out that before the new educational policy was implemented, the government in India supported the instruction in the classical Indian languages, and which has funded institutions involved in the spread of Hindu and Mohammedan learning, and gave financial support or assistance to Sanskrit and Arabic scholars to encourage them to achieve distinction to their respective fields. That means there are many colleges which are built by the people, by the ruling government before the British people came to rule us. Lots of colleges in the local language. There are so many colleges, Arabic colleges, Sanskrit universities, Arabic universities are established. Even many scholars were funded to learn more about these two languages. The government also provided grants for printing of ancient Sanskrit and Arabic texts in the original and in translation. That means is pointing out that lots of scope is given to Sanskrit and Arabic in India. That means many of our scholars have become thorough scholars in these two languages. Remember, Sanskrit was highly spoken in India before. But lots of people try to appreciate the use of Sanskrit in Arabic. And Rajaram Mohan Roy very cleverly argues against the decision taken by the ruling government to start or to open a Sanskrit college in Kolkata. Rajaram Mohan Rai personally doesn't like those colleges to be funded. He is not against is not against the ruling government, and or is not interested. We cannot say that he is not interested in Indian culture. He is interested, but whereas he wanted the people of India to get progressed in the various fields that yet to be explored by the Indian students. And he thinks that the students of India are like the frogs in the well. That means we are only learning the languages, that is Sanskrit and Arabic, but what are the benefitory things, or what are the useful things of learning those two languages? Do you think by learning these two languages, a student can be well versed in the other subjects as well? Is indirectly mocking at them to change their decision. It's telling that it is like a frog in the well. That means if there is a frog in the well, he thinks that only that particular well is the world for them. But that particular frog doesn't see what is there in the ocean. The same way, Raja Ram Mohan Roy wanted our students to explore and learn many things in life. Many things in life where they can see many aspects of life. So that's how he just tells that many texts are printed and in original and Sanskrit. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's letter locates a contradiction between modern scientific spirit of European civilization and its educational policies in India. The proposal to establish a new Sanskrit college comes as a shock to Raja Ram Mohan Roy, since in his view it does not conform to the liberal image of British. It is a shock. That's why he wanted to protest against the decision taken by the ruling government. That is why he just tells that the present rulers of India, traveling from thousands and thousands of miles, whose habits, whose culture, whose language, whose manners are totally different from the people who are living here. So it is a shock to him. It is clear from careful perusal of letter that Raja Ram Mohan Roy expects the colonial power to be true to its liberal image and find ways and means to promote science and arts for the benefit of Indian subjects. Benefits of Indian subjects is clearly telling us Raja Ram Mohan Roy, as I told you, is a social reformer. He wanted some reforms to take place in India. So he wanted the ruling government to introduce some of the things like science, arts, all the things, apart from Sanskrit and Arabic, because already we are well versed. That's what in the fourth paragraph of the, or fourth or fifth paragraph, he tells. It talks but lots, it doesn't criticize the Indian learning, and it tells that we are masters of these two languages. We have lots and lots of schools where Sanskrit is taught to different students. We have lots of funded universities. We have funded lots of colleges in terms of Sanskrit and Arabic. And even lots of Sanskrit and Arabic texts are reprinted. But I want the students of India to get benefited from different educational systems which are going to be introduced newly to us. That means even Indian students, they want to learn new things in their lives. Is not protesting. Remember, is not protesting, is not fighting. Is writing a petition through the letter to Lord Hammerest to consider his requests. That means Raja Ram Mohan Roy is representing all the Indian people. Remember, he is an educationalist. Remember, he is the one who translated Bhagavad Gita into Bengali. He has written many Bengali poems. He is a social reformer who thinks only for the benefit of India's progress. He had the notion that the students are the backbone of India's progress. He wanted Indian students to learn and get promoted in different fields. And unless and until the different fields are introduced to us, how can a student progress? Again, I have to go back to my sentence, that is frog in the well. Where he keeps on giving lots of emphasis on the introduction of science and arts streams in India, instead of opening another Sanskrit college in Kolkata. Remember, in those days, I'm talking about 1845, this particular letter is written in 1823. Money mattered a lot. To start or to establish a college, it takes lots of fund. India was not advanced scientifically in those days. All the work should be done manually. It requires, to build a house, it requires lots of manual work. Today, after the advancement of scientific thing, we can construct a beautiful house within a week or within 2 weeks. But just remember to construct a Sanskrit college in those days, how much fund it is required. Is indirectly telling, Raja Ram Mohan Roy is indirectly telling the ruling party of British not to waste any money on constructing Sanskrit college, which is already existing in India. So let us see. Raja Ram Mohan Roy finds indigenous system of instruction outdated because it is medieval. And he thinks that he clearly tells why he doesn't want Sanskrit college to be opened. Indigenous system of instruction is outdated. Every day, every year, the knowledge should be updated. Then only we will be able to show some progress in the educational system of India. It teaches the systems which have no rational and scientific basis and are a little used in the modern world. And it tells to if a student is learning Sanskrit in Arabic, it doesn't give them some rational and scientific basis. And it doesn't make an impact on the student's progress. A person can learn a particular language at any day, at any age. Why are you going to fund? We want some radical change in the educational policies of India. Before you implement, please think twice. Please think twice before you implement. Look at the logical argument of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, because he needs to convince the ruling government to come to a proper conclusion. He's writing in the form of a letter. So let us see. The learning of the learners are outdated. That's what he tells. The progress and modernization was only possible if people are taught the modern sciences and literature of the West. Sorry, some disturbance with the network. Yeah, let us see. And it just tells the progress and modernization was only possible if people were taught the modern sciences and literature of the West. He clearly tells what to be done by the British people. Roy was also opposed to the teaching of Sanskrit grammar and embodied only tiresome thing. That means if a person keeps on learning the grammar of Sanskrit, it is only useless. For Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Sanskrit was a language that, due to its linguistic difficulties, and it acts as a barrier to the diffusion of useful language. And he tells that the person learns Sanskrit. Do you think that particular person is going to speak in Sanskrit to all the people of India? Do you think Sanskrit will become an official language? It logically argues. Raja Ram Mohan Roy wanted some progress every day or every year. Every year, new things should be taught to the students of India. Then only they will be able to improve. Then only they will be able to see some progress in the educational system of India. And he doesn't condemn the learning of Sanskrit and Arabic. And he wanted additional subjects to be taught. He doesn't say that Sanskrit and Arabic learning should be eradicated. And he wanted additional subjects to be included to the university level, where they can learn and progress along with the life, where it is going to give lots of knowledge. If in India, if these reforms were not brought in India, do you think India would have become some of the challenging countries? India would become a challenging country to other countries. It is the efforts of Raja Ram Mohan Roy and other reformers and all the other subjects were brought into India, where we are given the freedom of selecting different languages. Now, most of the Indians are in different fields. They are doctors, they are engineers, they are medical practitioners, and aerospace engineers, and whatnot. They have achieved in all the fields of the world. That means how, if these things are not introduced in India, we would not have progressed this much to be a competitive country to a well-developed country. We would not have become a competitive country to the developed nations like America and Japan. Because of the efforts of all the social reformers of those days, where they have taken lots of pain to bring all these radical changes in the educational policies of India. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's letter is one of the most significant documents of Indian educational system or even in history. It signifies not only in its basic assumption of the superiority of the Western system of instruction and of Western sciences, literature, but also the fact that it strengthens our mind. It strengthens our mind. So, with lots of thinking, Raja Ram Mohan Roy has written this letter to Lord Hammerest. Remember, it's very, very, very difficult for a person to convince the ruling parties of the British. If a person is challenging the ruling party and he is killed. Remember, Rajaram Mohan Roy is a good educationalist. He had the vision of the future. He had the vision of the future. And let us see another important aspect of